everybody. Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with Grammy-winning bassist, producer, educator, engineer, Todd Phillips.
Hey, thank you. You read my bio.
There's a lot of stuff there, but I digress. As always, we like to kind of go back to the beginning. How did you get started in music and on bass?
Well, I was in a little kid rock and roll band. I had an electric guitar at 11 years old and found I was just playing the bass lines on it. So about a year later, I got a precision bass, Fender Precision. And at 11 years old, I think the bass was about 4 feet tall, and so was I. So it helped me a few years later to transition to upright. In my hands, I remember moving it to tune it and then moving it back because I couldn't reach the tuners.
Wow.
So I think it helped set me up for a longer string length when I finally grew up.
Did you pursue formal education, or?
I play by ear. I'm totally faking it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I kind of learn while I earn a little bit. Yeah, I learned about music, like, what do they call it? Learn on the job kind of a thing.
Sure.
You know, I think we started a band with my little brother on drums, and then we figured out how to play. So we did it backwards. But then finally, you know, when I switched to upright and got in my early 20s, I got in a real band with David Grishman and learned a lot faster. I was playing mandolin, so I learned about chord structure and harmony and a few other things.
Gotcha.
So it's been a long, slow process. I didn't just go to school for 4 years and come out and start playing.
Well, and you know, it's always interesting because there are so many different possible journeys when it comes to being a musician, and it's an ongoing process as well. We're never done learning and picking up, you know, little tidbits here and there. And
Yeah.
I find the blessing and the curse of having great ears is that you pick up a tune so much faster than trying to figure it out on paper. I don't like to do the work of reading the notes if I can hear where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
To be.
Eventually, you want to throw away the paper anyway, and play.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm stuck on chord charts and stuff in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do that kind of stuff. And now that I've moved to Nashville, we do the number system here rather than the chord names. So,
Wow.
you know, that's a whole, I had to learn that language just to go to most sessions around here, which is a great system. The singers change keys and they don't need a new chart.
Wow.
It's same numbers apply to every key, you know.
That is something. And among other things, you mentioned the David Grishman Quintet. You're a founding member of that.
Yeah.
And more recently, Appalachian Road Show.
Yeah. That's kind of like from 1974 to last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And predominantly bluegrass music, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, kind of. You know, the Grishman Quintet was a little bit a takeoff in a jazz direction from bluegrass instrumentals. It was all instrumental band, no vocals, and a little bit more like a Django Reinhardt. We didn't do swing music, but acoustic instrumentals that were, a lot of them were zippy, quick.
Gotcha.
But came from bluegrass roots in a way, like a weird just fusion kind of music, you know.
Well, and that is one of the exciting things about our times, that we are seeing so many blends of musical genres.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the lines are real blurred now, especially in that bluegrass, what they're calling bluegrass now. A lot of the young people are educated. We were just talking about skipping the education.
Yeah.
A lot of them are coming out of Berklee School of Music now, and they're real smart, and they've heard much more music than I heard when I was 20-something years old. Mm-hmm. And so the stuff they're creating is really a blend of a lot of things. Real interesting. Some of it's so dense it's kind of doesn't get in here, you know.
Yeah.
But it's super creative, and I'm talking about like Punch Brothers or
Sure.
I don't know, Sarah Jarosz, young acoustic players.
Well, and the lines really do blur, and especially when they started thinking about like into country, because country's also kind of morphed into more of a popish kind of realm. If you go from what, I don't know, Gene Autry would have been back in the day to what, and like Dixie Chicks had their roots in bluegrass.
Yeah.
but end up on a more pop chart or country or
Yeah. Well,
R&B.
even at least they have a little banjo and fiddle in almost everything, which today a lot of country bands you don't see a country instrument at all.
Exactly.
It's almost like seeing the Doobie Brothers or something.
Mhm.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, but yeah, the lines are blurred.
I had one of the things, I'd watch some of your guys' videos, and I'll be sure to share some of them, but there was one particular one, what Wish the Wars Were All Over, where you're in water. Was your bass actually in water with you?
Not my bass. No, but it was kind of fun to submerge that bass. It didn't want to go.
Yeah.
No, somebody volunteered kind of a junker bass. It wasn't that bad. It's bad now because we were out there for an hour or two. The back started coming loose. The top started coming loose. I had to submerge it, get water in the F-holes. You had to get the water inside to get it to go down. I couldn't push it in the water.
Yeah.
And we got out there at sunrise. So we had a certain effect, and it was fun to abuse that bass, especially since it wasn't mine.
Well,
and it wasn't that. It wasn't much of a bass. They said they're going to glue it all back together, and now it's super special to them now. I don't know who found it or where, but thanks for loaning me the bass.
Well, it's like trying to sink like a rowboat.
Yeah. Oh, we took pictures of it floating on the lake, and we had a lot of fun since we had permission to do it.
Yeah. Well, I talked with there's a bassist out of the UK, Frankie Pulane. They had done a video where their guitar player was on a surfboard, and to be able to take they didn't actually use his guitar, but they got a look-alike at one of the local pawn shops, and pretty much felt that it was going to be sacrificed in the name of the video because he was going to fall more than once.
Yeah.
By the time the day was over.
Or the bluegrass version of the Who, smashing the instruments. It's a lot of people say, "Oh, that's photoshopped," but I just know the one band picture they got out of it, which just looks really cool to me.
You've played with a myriad of people, Joan Baez. Do you have, I'm sure there's too many to count, but any others that leap to the forefront that you have great memories of?
Well, I guess professionally, right when I got out of high school, I played bluegrass in pizza parlors, then David Grishman Quintet. From there, I went to Tony Rice unit, the guitar player with Grishman. And then I guess from there, I like being in a band. I've always been in a band since I was 11 years old. Mm-hmm. So the Appalachian Roadshow is a nice thing for me. It's like, oh, I'm in a band again. But in the meantime, I was kind of like a hired gun. I've done a lot of recording sessions or one-offs or short tours. And the Joan Baez thing, I thought it was a single tour of Europe, and it ended up being about 2.5 years.
Wow.
Like 6, 7, 8 tours. And man, she tours seriously, like a month and a half at a time. You're in Europe for a month and a half, a couple times a year. So it was great experience, traveling in style. What can I tell you? It's hard to do in Europe, but she took good care of us. And I was in another band called the Bluegrass Album Band. We made 6 records over about 15 years, and a lot of people know that in the bluegrass world. We started at the transition when LPs started to disappear and CDs started to come in. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say we kind of kept the bluegrass repertoire available to a new generation. That was a great band. And so we made a record about every other year for quite a while.
Nice.
And then recently, a couple years ago, I played with Robbie Fulks a lot. He's a great songwriter. And then Appalachian Roadshow, it was a concept. They were making their first record about 2 years ago. And I was hired to play on the record, and they just kidnapped me. And I've been on the road with them. And then we made a second record about a year ago. But with the pandemic, I haven't seen them since about March. Mm-hmm. So we had a great, really busy spring and summer set up. It just all went away, and we're just sitting home waiting now, like everybody else.
I hear you. And I noticed that you play both acoustic, electric kind of, and upright basses. It's a good time to talk about gear. Tell us, how are you getting your sound? What are you playing on?
Well, I play this. This is my favorite old bass back here. It's a German bass that I bought with Tony Rice. He found it for me. And I've bought other more luxurious, expensive basses in the last 30, 40 years, but that's the one to play, and that's the one to record with. And I put a Fishman, the BP 100 on it, which is just the basic Fishman. I like it the best. They've come up with other versions. They're in the adjuster wheels, full circle, but I still like the old one. But I run it through a little tube preamp by Hughes and Kettner. It's called a BATT, BAT. They made them in the 90s. They're obsolete. I bought all of them off eBay I can find. But it's just a real simple, small tube preamp you can put in your suitcase. And then I've always used, until recently, just the old-fashioned Polytone, the old Mini Brute with a 12-inch speaker. Ron Carter used them, Joe Pass. I used that until I ran into an AER in Germany. The same thing, just a cube with a 10-inch speaker. The AER, man, just sounds amazing. It's incredible. It does not sound like a small amp at all. And so on stage, I put that little amp behind me and to the left. So I've got the bass in my left ear and the band, and I don't put anything in the front monitors. I got my right ear on the band. And if I need more bass, I can lean that way. If I need more one instrument, I can lean this way. I believe in 3 dimensions. I don't like the earbuds, So that's the stage thing. And in the studio, no electronics whatsoever. Just give me a $10,000 microphone, and I know where to put it.
There you go. Well, it is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to the acoustic instruments, as far as capturing that signal and getting it into a soundboard or getting it into a front of house. And there are so many different approaches where some players like to do a combination of microphone and transducer. We have a manufacturer across the river here in Portland that makes a microphone that you can attach kind of between the tailpiece and the bridge.
Ear trumpet.
Yeah.
The tailpiece and the bridge. Yeah, those sound great.
Yeah.
When I learned about this, I was in this Montreux, it was called the Anger Higby Quintet or something, but it turned into the Montreux Band on this Windham Hill Records. We played the Montreux Jazz Festival, and we recorded live. And I was young, I didn't know anything. They put a mic on the bass, a pickup on the bass, and then I was in an amp behind me, and they mic'd the speaker on the amp.
Wow.
Which, by the way, what I do, old-fashioned style, I don't do a direct line. I create a sound loud enough to mic that competes with the monitors, and I mic that. So at least it turns back into air moving that's being mic'd, rather than the contact thing. But so I heard, anyway, the point is, I heard the 3 tracks in the studio for the mix. The direct of the pickup sounded horrible, just like oink, oink, right? The mic sounded like a monitor mix. You heard absolutely every instrument in that mic. No more bass than any other. It just sounded like a mono mix. And then miking that speaker, I worked on that sound of that amp enough that I got a mic on it, and that was the thing to use. So anyway, if the monitors are very loud, it's really hard to mic a bass, because they're hard to mic anyway. Live on a stage that's loud. But a lot of bluegrass bands, they use no monitors now. Del McCurry Band, a lot of it, they just say no monitors. We are our own monitors. And in that case, I can just mic the bass. And the acoustic instruments are their own monitors.
Gotcha.
But that's rare. If you get on a very big stage, it's really hard to do.
When you talk to people about even like the room, I mean, like when you've got bleed over in from your other instruments, usually if you've got like a full drum kit or something, then you're hearing all of them a lot more. So it is a challenge.
I did a gig with a very powerful drummer, Ed Toth, the Doobie Brothers drummer. I was playing with Don Cowan here. He hired me to play bass, which was a real honor, acoustic bass, so he could sing. And we did a Thanksgiving show here, and a bunch of years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago. They're on YouTube. But Ed is a fantastic drummer, but the bass was acting as a mic for his drums, because the pickup is live on the bridge, and the bass is a big big hollow thing.
Resonant cavity, yes.
I had to roll up a towel, and it was under the fingerboard, through the bridge, and down through the tailpiece. I mean, I should have just filled the bass with concrete or putty, you know. Yeah, the whole bass acted as a microphone.
Oh, wow.
I was playing an acoustic upright bass, but I had to pretty much kill all the acoustics on it to get it to work in that case.
Wow, it's such a challenge. And string-wise, you have a preference in strings?
Yeah, I've used a Dario Helicore. I think they're called 610, the model. It's their basic medium gauge, medium length, 3/4 upright bass string. Mm-hmm. I change them once or twice a year, and they're incredible. They're great. Yeah. It's all I use. But you can't afford to experiment. I mean, the bass strings can be a couple $100 a set.
Yeah.
Find something you like. It's kind of a roll of the dice to go try another kind, you know. Yeah, it's all I use.
Yeah, I think it's one of the compelling reasons that we have gear acquisition syndrome in the bass community, and that is constantly looking for what will work better or sound better or feel better. But since it's such a journey, if you're lucky enough to come across something that is great early on, it'll save you filling up your house with instruments.
I buy other basses because they're beautiful instruments, and you know, if you find one and you can afford it and you like it, and of course I use them. I'm from California. I moved to Nashville, but I do a lot with the Appalachian Roadshow. I leave a bass in North Carolina to play with the Roadshow. If we go east from here. I had a bass in California in case I go west. I left one in Chicago with Robbie Fulks for about 4 or 5 years. So, you know, I fly with a bass, which is maybe interesting to some people. I still bring a bass on the plane.
Wow.
I found it's still the cheapest and the safest way to get a bass there. Southwest is the only airline. They have bulkhead leg room, and you buy a ticket for it, and you bring it on the plane. And, you know, by the time you buy or rent a case, pay for the repairs when they break it anyway, and you get to where you're going, and you've got this case the size of a freezer, you know, it's just Southwest, what do you pay, average $100, $150 a ticket? I just bring it on the plane. And it's a chore. It's how I get my exercise.
There you go.
Walking down the concourse to the gate, you know.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I know that, you know, manufacturers, luthiers have looked at possibilities of like a detachable neck, or in other instances doing away with a body entirely. I know like Yamaha has their acoustic bass. The whole thing fits in a very narrow bag where if you have to travel, but you don't have that acoustic.
No, you know, I've tried a few of those, just the stick basses. To me, it's like an ironing board with strings on it. It's not why I took up the instrument.
Gotcha.
You know? Can you see that bass guitar?
Yes.
I kind of adapted. That's an old, huge K guitar, 17-inch archtop. And I built that. I took the guitar neck out and I built a bass neck with an extended fingerboard. So it's like a miniature. The feel is right for me, and I still play it upright. And to me, that's an actual instrument as opposed to a 2x4 with strings on it. And so I just assume if I have to fly somewhere quick, you know, a lot of people, they really want the upright bass, especially when from me. But the Roadshow, we've used this quite a bit, and they like it, and I like it, and it sure makes travel a lot easier. And it sounds the same and sometimes better on stage. In a way, it's easier to get that sound out to the hall than this sound, the upright.
Gotcha. Well, and I know that also the demands of what the population is looking for. I've spoken with other bluegrass players, one in particular that uses one of the NS design basses, and she told me that she got a lot of dirty looks coming onto the bluegrass scene, and they're going, "You're going to play that?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "Yes, this is my is my bass."
Well, if you close your eyes, probably everything's fine. But bluegrass is a traditional music where, you know, they kind of want to see the big bass.
Exactly.
think I've gotten away with this all right, especially playing with Appalachian Roadshow. In a lot of, we're kind of forward-leaning in one way, but we're super traditional in another way. And I know the guys in the band have said they like it. I hope they're not lying to me. Maybe they're just trying to be nice or feel sorry for me. I've tried other acoustic bass guitars and not liked them at all, so I had to make my own. I had to have a thick fingerboard, a real miniature version of an upright fingerboard that I could get my thumb under. Like most acoustic bass guitars, they're flat, like a two-dimensional thing, like an electric bass, and I don't know what to do with my thumb because I'm so used to putting it under an extended fingerboard.
Yeah.
So I've solved that, and I can use the same technique, just kind of miniaturized a little bit on this thing. So I like it.
Well, if we ever see the Todd Phillips signature acoustic bass, we'll know where it got its roots.
Well, I'm making them. I got an order from a guy in New Jersey, and I'm making my second one. Well, this is what I've been doing during the pandemic. I've bought a bunch of these guitars, and I'm actually converting them. So on a little small scale, I'll make probably a dozen of them, maybe.
Nice.
And, get them out there. Willie Weeks was over here. He kind of dug it. And there's a lot of people in town that, I'm going to pass them around, see what people think, like John Cowan or Robert Kearns. Do you know him? A friend of mine. See what those guys think of it. I've talked to him about it, but during the pandemic, we've held off looking at it so far.
Gotcha. Well, and it is necessity being the mother of invention. I mean, it's one of the reasons the instruments have evolved.
Yeah.
As well. We had the opportunity. We were down in Phoenix. We went to the Musical Instrument Museum, and they have an octo bass there.
Yeah.
And just the whole concept of having a 12-foot instrument that you can't move from anywhere. You has to stay in the venue permanently and uses capos and levers and stuff to play.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, if that's where you started, you go, I need to have something I can take somewhere else.
Yeah. And, a couple hundred years ago, they built that 2-story tall basses for symphonies.
Yeah.
Yes. I think they had a guy on a balcony fretting it, or not fretting, but fingerboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they went to the one with the levers, and right down. Now we got the uke bass.
Yeah. So it's made kind of a whole circuit. So it is kind of interesting to see that evolution, and not to mention the whole electric bass, which is again a relatively new instrument comparatively, but it had to do with portability and
Lloyd Lohr in the 1920s tried to invent that electric bass, and there's a lot of early versions, Vega and Gibson, and where'd it go from there? A few before Leo Fender did the Precision.
Oh,
Kay
absolutely.
Actually had a little version of this, right? The I don't know what they call it, but anyway, it looked a little bit like this.
Well, fun stuff. Looking ahead, we're talking during the pandemic, so as you'd mentioned, a lot of plans, a lot of touring, a lot of things have kind of just come to a halt. In addition to building your unique signature acoustic basses, are there any plans for the future? I know it's all probably hinging on things coming a little bit back to normal.
Yeah, we don't know. We really don't know. I got a call this morning about next September. I said, well, that sounds like a good maybe. But I also have a friend that wants to record in LA, and he said, I don't think we can do it till like next November. Just thinking about when you get the vaccine and when people take it, when it all takes effect, who knows? I really don't know. But luckily not luckily, but I've certainly got unfinished studio projects. I've had a project I've worked on for 15 years with various artists, all doing songs of Hazel Dickens. And it got held up. It should have been released this year, but the label's not releasing very much this year. It's a great collection of people. Linda Ronstadt's on it, Elvis Costello. It took 15 years because I had a lot of delays. People would come in and record for it, each person doing a song, and then their labels would clamp down on them and not let it release,
Oh.
I went through kind of the heartbreak of getting a really nice track and then I can't use it a couple times. And last year, I'm really done now. There's a couple to mix, but I got John Prine and Dolly Parton to sing the last two unfinished tracks, a couple of locals.
Yeah. Well, while John was still around, because he,
Yeah.
passed recently.
Yeah, about a year ago he sang it, I guess. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I couldn't believe I got Dolly Parton. She like completed the project for me. The real troubled number that I could never get released by the other artist's label. She just came in and sang, and those people, they run, Dolly and John Prine, they run their own lives. The labels don't control them, so they just did it like it's so easy. One of the big advantages of moving here. I've met so many people moving here. I felt like I kind of stalled out in California, and I moved here about 10 or 12 years ago. It's just opened a lot of doors, met a lot of people. It's great.
Very nice. Well, and if people want to stay on top of what you're doing, I know you have toddphillipsmusic.com. It may not be as up to date, but perhaps it'll be a good place for people to look.
I move slow. I'm a bass player. I'm playing long. Website's totally up to date as of 2017. Yeah, and then my wife set up Facebook, Todd Phillips Music on Facebook.
Okay.
And it creeps along too. I'm not a front man. I'm not good at self-promotion, but yeah, if anybody needs to, they can write to me on either one, I guess.
Gotcha. Well, very cool. Well, Todd, we appreciate you taking time to share your story, your music. Folks, you've seen him here. Todd Phillips coming to you on Bass Musician Magazine.
Thank you.